Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 38 for Friday, October 19th, 2007. Nothing but Apple. It's time for Windows Weekly, episode 38. Holy cow, how did we get this far so fast? Leo Laporte here. Paul Thurrott is there in beautiful Dedham, in the dead of winter already, and he's mourning his bow socks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. They haven't lost yet. They're not out. They're down, but not out, Paul. It's don't give up yet. Actually,
it's okay. I'm okay with it.
By the time this airs, they'll probably be out.
As long as it doesn't take another 80 whatever years, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you won a pennant. You won a World Series. What are you worried about?
There's no reason to be greedy.
You broke the curse of the Bambino. That's all. maybe a little bit. No, and I grew up in Providence, so I root when I see the Red Sox in postseason. I root for them like crazy. Yeah. I really do. It's fun to see the Indians do well too, though.
I was hoping for sort of a Boston-Arizona World Series.
Why is that?
We've got friends in Arizona. We used to live there, so that would have been fun and maybe a lame excuse to head back there and go to a game. But
well, there's always you can always come out to Giants spring trainings in Phoenix, and you're always welcome to come out to that. It used to be fun. It's too bad. Spring training used to be, just for the hardcore fans, and it was a great chance to see the players up close. Everybody was very relaxed. There was hardly anybody there. Now it's big business, and it's a zoo.
Well, it's funny. Spring training is always held wherever people are retiring. So it's Arizona, right. Florida.
Yeah, the old folks can go there.
Yeah, and so having lived in Arizona, I'm familiar with that time of year.
Go Giants!
Yeah.
Go Giants! I loved it. I used to go, and I brought my son a few times, and it's too difficult. You can't even get tickets anymore unless you order them months ahead of time. So I just kind of gave up.
Well, one of the big trends now, if you have a popular team like the Red Sox, is you just book a cheap trip to some town that no one ever goes to the games in, and fly to wherever and go to see a baseball game in some other city.
Yep. And, I've seen the Giants play in Houston, and let me tell you, that Astrodome, boy, that was a bad ballpark.
I actually did see the Patriots play in Arizona a few years back. The one game in the past decade that they played, in Arizona.
Wow. Yeah. No, I was the president of the Giants fan club at the radio station that broadcast the Giants games. So I would take fans on those trips. We would go all over to watch the Giants play in all different places. And it was fun. It's really fun. Anyway, we're not here to talk about baseball. We're here to talk about
Weekly.
We're here to talk about Apple. Apple. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. Wrong podcast. Or is it the wrong podcast? This is Windows Weekly, but there was some Windows news. You want to talk about Microsoft's big telephony announcement this week?
No, I do not.
It's kind of middle. It's kind of middleware. It's not the most exciting stuff in the world.
No, in the context of corporate computing and so forth, it is very interesting. But I assume that most people listening to this are more the consumer variety, perhaps.
I have never. It's funny. I have no affinity for enterprise computing. I've never covered it. I have no interest in covering it, and we don't cover it on Twitch.
Well, let me tell you how schizoid it is to cover it and to cover the consumer stuff.
Because Windows IT Pro is enterprise, right?
Of course, and they want more and more of that stuff. So, today I published an article about SQL Server 2008 and a screenshot gallery for Windows Live Events, which is about as consumerish as you can get. So it's part of my scary existence.
That must be tough. But be honest, it's much more interesting to cover the consumer stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it's not even close. Yeah, no comparison.
Yeah, I just have no. And you see, this beauty of doing Twit is I cover what I feel like covering. I don't have to cover anything, So.
Well, I look at it like this, and we've had this discussion before, because obviously when Apple comes up, people say, "What the heck? This is a Windows podcast." But in this case, we are talking about things that affect Windows users. We're not just discussing Apple for the sake of discussing Apple. It just so happens, this week, as these things do, there's a bunch of stuff going on that happens to be Apple related, and I would just remind people that it is on topic because it affects them. Most iPod users or Windows users.
Do you have a hankering just to piss everybody off, Paul? Is that really your secret need? You want the next? Because first you write an article that says Leopard, Leopard, big deal, and man, you got them Apple people mad. Now we're going to do a Windows Weekly that has almost all Apple content. You're going to get the Windows.
Well, I'm still going to rip into Leopard. I mean, don't misunderstand what's happening here.
Okay, that's a relief.
I mean, the message is consistent.
No, Paul.
I don't.
I defend you to everybody because you say what you think, you say what you mean. You can absolutely trust Paul to say what he believes, and it's totally reliable and consistent, and I have no problem with it.
I'm impressed, by the way, by the Apple fanatic types because they're also serious about what they believe in. They don't always have the best arguments.
They will broach no criticism whatsoever. So what did you say? What did you say about Leopard?
Oh well, I should just as a sort of a preview here, I will at least mention that many times in my life, many more than you might believe, I have written something, published it, and walked away and never thought anything of it, only to return to my computer later to discover that people have been very upset by something that I wrote. In this case, I knew going in that the bit of commentary I was adding to the story was going to upset some people. And I just want to say I didn't do it to upset people. I did know going in that it would upset some people, but I also, as you've said, I honestly feel this way about this product.
So when you named the article "Skinning a Cat," you didn't.
Oh, that's
ad copy.
That's a promotional.
Well, how about this? Mac OS X Leopard. Who's the copycat now?
Yes.
And your lead is great. Sometimes I wonder how Apple CEO Steve Jobs can sleep at night.
Right. Well, that's an old article, by the way. I mean, so that's a preview, from. Before.
So where's the new article? I see the banner.
This is on WinInfo. So,
okay.
What this basically is a news story about Apple's announcement that on October 26th they're going to release Leopard, which, as anyone on the beta will tell you, is actually not complete yet. And I have it running here on my Mac. I will not write about it.
Are you using Leopard? Interesting. You're ahead of me. I haven't tried it.
Well, it's good. And actually, that's one thing I need to get out of the way.
Wait a minute. You say it's good?
Hold on. It's all going to come around.
Wait, I've got a blog post to write here. Paul Theron says it's good.
I'll dictate this.
Okay.
No, Apple is in an interesting position now, and it's not a unique position because it's the same position Microsoft is in, which is their operating system is now mature. And the truth is, as they go through these iterations of updates over the past several years, there's not a lot to add anymore, is there?
It becomes harder and harder, doesn't it? To innovate.
Yeah. And if you actually take a screenshot of Leopard and put it up next to a screenshot of the first version of Mac OS X, they're easily identifiable as the same thing. I mean,
there's
visually,
there's some cosmetic differences in Leopard.
Absolutely. And I look at the cosmetic stuff that's occurring as Leopard as being sort of like the Carbon UI stuff that happened back in OS 8 or whatever it was. It's lipstick, but not lipstick on a pig. Like I said, Mac OS X is a solid operating system. It's a great operating system.
People accuse Microsoft of doing the same thing with Vista, though.
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, both Windows and Mac OS X have had their share of evolutionary rather than revolutionary updates over the past few years.
Right. But it's interesting because we had the Macalope on Mac Break Weekly, who essentially is you hadn't written your article yet, but he's saying the same thing. He was criticizing us because Chris Breen and I were saying, this Leopard, we've been waiting for it. It's been delayed. It better be a big update. And he pointed out, as many now have, that Apple kind of alternates big updates with evolutionary updates. It's time.
That's ridiculous.
You don't think that's the case?
No, I don't think that matters because what that person just said, whoever he is what Apple backers always try to do, which is just defend the company when all you have to do is look at the facts, which is Apple yet again is trumpeting this as the second coming.
No, you're right. That's
300 new features.
No, you're right. And that's what we were saying. Boy, the expectations are high. And he was saying, lower your expectations, he was saying.
Right. Well, how can I lower my expectations when Apple has done nothing but make it seem like it is the most exciting thing on earth? I mean, that's my problem here. I mean, if Apple, came out and said, look, the operating system is mature. It's a minor update. It has a couple of major new features, and most of the rest of it is
But they want to sell copies of these. They're not going to say, you don't really need it.
Well, okay, but what I'm reacting to is things like 300 new features when 10 or 12 of them are in the DVD player. 6 of them are in fonts.
Right.
24 of them are in iChat, which is an instant messaging application.
But they frankly need some updates to iChat.
I know, but
no, I agree with you. In fact, there is a page. If you go to apple.com/macOSX/features/300.html, all 300 are listed, and it's exactly what you say. If you look at what they're saying, this is one of the 300, you'll go, what? I can eject all partitions now. Ooh. There's an empty trash button on the trash can. Ooh.
Look, plus or minus. I mean, there are things in Leopard that I really like. There are things in Leopard that I think actually a step back, and some of those have to do with window size and positioning, and remembering views and so forth. But there's a weird fade through in the menu that picks up the color that's underneath, which looks terrible.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I don't like blue folders. Maybe that's not a big deal. I mean, I'm not gonna mark them down for that stuff. That's aesthetic. It's people will feel differently about that than I do.
There are a handful though of significant changes.
Okay, like what?
Well, some of it is not visible except to the developer. Things like core animation, you're not going to see.
I don't want to talk about that stuff.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. I spent an hour debating this with somebody via instant messaging today, who's a complete Mac freak and a good friend of mine. And my end point on that is simply this. That's what they said about Tiger too.
Yeah.
And I wrote a review of Tiger 2.5 years ago. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I said, the same thing I'm saying now. It's solid. I like it. I don't really feel that it's a big deal. If you're coming from Windows, it's it's a solid update.
Is it worth $129?
Well, see, that's a tough one too. Let me get to that in one moment, because that's one of those. That's part of the debate, I think. I didn't feel that Tiger was worth $129, and I guess I don't feel that this one is either. But let me get to that in a moment.
Okay.
The developer stuff, that was one of the things that people criticized me about for my Tiger review, because I really kind of underplayed that. Mm-hmm. And my attitude is, with the developer stuff now, or people have written me and said, well, yeah, but it's going to be the basis for this mobile platform they're working on and all that stuff. That's exciting. And, maybe that is exciting, maybe it isn't. But it's not exciting to the person who buys Leopard on October 26th.
No.
I'm looking at this from the standpoint of someone who's actually going to use this system as it is today, not the things that it may do for you in the future, but what it does for you now.
To be fair, I think you will see in January a whole bunch of revised applications for OS X that will be better, because most applications do rely on these core operating system services, and so they're going to benefit.
If that happens, I will write about that, and I'll be happy about it. I'm not trying to shortchange anybody. All I'm saying is Apple users do tend to buy these upgrades in the millions, and it's a lot of money. And what are you getting out of the box, compared to Tiger? And
I'm going to be in line at 6:00 Friday night.
Well, to be honest, I probably will be in line as well, because I actually enjoy the social aspects of.
Well, but also events. We like new things. I mean, it's pretty. Let's contrast. It is. But it's part of the. We like new cars. You don't need to buy a new car every 5 years, but we like to. And if you and instead of $30,000, it's only $129 every couple of years. I mean, this is a different attitude. Apple's attitude is, instead of waiting 5 years and doing a major upgrade as Microsoft did with Vista, let's just spread it out a little bit and give people something to get excited about every few years. And by the way, make more money.
Okay, Microsoft would probably agree with that comment. I don't think they intended to take 5 years and so forth. Obviously, they are on a more even keel now, and we'll see how that goes. But
Actually, I think Microsoft would be criticized if they did the same thing.
Sure.
I think they would, wouldn't they?
Okay, yeah, no, right. There's no happy middle ground for Microsoft.
They can't win.
But I would also, I think this is an interesting conversation, because inevitably, if I do something like complain that this thing has been delayed, if I mention that there are secret features that never happened, if I mentioned that there are 300 new features and most of them are lame, people come back to me and they say, well, what about Microsoft? What about Microsoft? What about Microsoft?
Well, that's not the conversation, though. Every single thing you just
saying. In other words,
everything you just said is absolutely legitimate and completely true.
What about Microsoft? I have actually criticized Microsoft for those same things.
But that's neither here nor there. I think that's because they see you as a Microsoft shill for some reason.
Well, where were you propping me up when I was criticizing Microsoft for this same stuff?
Right.
I don't just criticize Apple because they're Apple. I criticize any company in this space who does what they do and then doesn't follow through on it. There was no one on this earth more critical of Microsoft after they blew it with Vista and all the stuff they were going to promise. And I mean, I was this was a serious soul-searching moment for me. I mean, I almost severed my relationship with the company in very bad fashion over this. I mean,
no, I am with you 100%. And
I just want to be clear, though, because a lot of people, they read this in isolation and think, who's this jerk?
Right.
Oh, look, Paul Thurrott's super site for Windows. Oh, no wonder.
Right.
From his ivory tower in the sky that he's looking down on Apple. I mean, I like Apple's products by and large. I'm not a big fan of the boasting stuff and the exaggerations and sometimes the outright lies. I'm not a big fan of promising stuff that doesn't exist, and which they don't actually typically do. But the secret feature thing, what the heck was that?
We don't know. They were secret.
Well, I tell you, that's not. I mean, listen, maybe they'll come out on October 26th with something that they have not beta tested. But I can tell you, as of today, there's nothing secret.
There are no secrets so far.
Yeah.
No, and it's all incremental. There are a few things that are interesting. I think the cover flow of preview stuff is very interesting. I think that'll.
All right. So actually, let's just talk about 2 or 3 of the big features because there are some that I think are interesting.
And there's some that are goofy, and I'm never going to use either.
Well, all right. So here's one. And I had to go back and look at this today in Vista because, for example, Time Machine is a good example.
Yeah.
Time Machine is one of those flashy demos. It's insane looking. I think of it as Microsoft or as Apple's version of Microsoft Bob, where the UI is just crazy. I mean, I
haven't seen it. What does it look like?
So what it is, just so you know, and
it's go back.
It's go back. There you go. So it's a feature in Windows called previous versions.
Vista does it.
Vista does it. Windows Server 2003 does it. Vista is the first version on the client that adds it, directly into the desktop OS. But basically what you do is from any view, if you're on the desktop or you navigate into a folder, you go down to the dock and you press this Time Machine button. And this is when it brings up that insane user interface.
Well, I can't wait to see
it. And it's a star field with a galaxy or a sun in the distance. The stars. Yeah. It's like that star field,
screensaver.
It's actually moved toward you. I'm not kidding. It's
going
crazy
back in time.
Yeah. So what you see is views going back toward into the distance visually of the thing you're looking at, whether it's a window
ridiculous.
like the Finder, an application, whatever it is.
Oh, that's just absurd. Just give me a list.
It's crazy. Okay. So, but here's the thing. If you talk about the differences between Mac OS X and Windows at a very basic level, I think we will both agree that the one comment that stands out the most about Mac OS X is that it doesn't get in your way. Right? It doesn't put up all that free UI stuff that Microsoft likes to do.
Yes. It doesn't ask you for your password every 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, every 6 minutes. But whatever.
Not quite as much.
Fair enough. But I guess I guess I buy into that, except that the one thing I say about Mac OS X, which I think maybe you might not agree with, is I actually think that OS X is aimed at more technical users. I think that it assumes a certain amount of sophistication. And I think that anyone who is sophisticated enough to look at Windows, look at OS X and say, yep, I want to go to OS X, is maybe sophisticated enough to actually do it.
Right.
That there is actually a slightly higher barrier of entry.
It's funny because Apple for so long advertised itself as for the rest of us.
Exactly. I don't believe that.
Well, I say that one of the reasons I use OS X is as a sophisticated user because I want a Linux command or a Unix command line because I want some of that underlying stuff.
Right. I think it's for more sophisticated people. I really do.
It might be.
But
it might be.
Okay.
On the other hand, I'd say Windows is more for people who want to tweak their system and play with it and have lots of settings and stuff like that.
I would say even broader than that. Windows is just for everybody. So that is the reason for some of these crazy UIs, because they have to do stuff that works for everybody.
Right.
My grandmother has to use it in addition to me.
Right.
That makes for a very interesting, user experience in some cases, and that's the stuff that people are talking about when they say it gets in my way. What's funny about Time Machine is that it is the exact opposite of the way Apple typically does things, and it is the way that Microsoft does things, instead. So, in other words, in Windows, to use previous versions, you actually click on a document, right-click on a document, and you choose Restore Previous Versions, and this little dialog comes up.
When do you want
it gives you a list of the previous versions that are available.
No Starfield.
No, there's no Starfield. And what's interesting about this is the type of thing Apple would typically do.
Right.
But they have a Starfield, and I don't understand that. But it's limited in other ways. First of all, you can't store previous versions, or whatever they're calling this stuff, on the same partition as the file. So you actually need a second disk.
Wow.
On a laptop,
that
typically means an external drive.
Right.
Which means when you're out there moving around with the stuff, I'm not sure that it's backing anything up.
Right.
I suppose you could partition your disk.
Well, it stops. It stops, and when you get home, it continues.
Okay, but what if you make a bunch of changes to a file on a plane or something?
No, then it will. Yeah, it will save them when you get home.
You will.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Well.
So you unplug. You're not. It's not going to do it when you're not plugged into that second drive.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying. The interface is odd. The other thing that's odd about it is you actually have to go and turn it on. Previous
rightly so, because be honest with you, I don't like these. I turn off System Restore too. It takes up too much space. It seems to slow things down. I have other backup systems. This is really for Grandma.
Grandma, if she's an Isaac Asimov fan, or a Star Trek fan or whatever. I mean, it's crazy looking. That's all. And I think that's my big complaint. This is not the elegant UI we've come to expect from Apple. It's crazy looking.
I think
crazy.
All but the most crazed Apple fanboys, and there are some, and most of the criticism for you comes from, frankly, the people who just will not broach any criticism of Apple at all. Unfortunately,
absolutely.
But for those of us who are not quite so insane, I think we are acknowledging, and we're starting to realize Apple is not the Apple we knew. There is something going on there, and it's hard to exactly pinpoint what.
I guess I'm trying to say Apple is the Apple.
Really?
They've always been. You're just starting to see it for the first time.
Oh, no.
I think, listen, there's a certain hubris going on. I mean,
there's a lot of hubris. Now, you're right. Steve's always been this way. He's never had the luxury of acting this way.
Right.
Maybe that's it.
Well,
he had to be humble because he was number two.
Anyway, but that's Time Machine. I think it's a valuable feature. And as silly as it is looking, I've been using it. It seems like it works pretty good. Fine. Okay. Now I haven't taken this thing on a trip to test what you were just talking about.
No, it says it will do that. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So that's something I want to look at. The other stuff that's going on, obviously, the minor changes to the desktop and the interface, to me, is a non-event. The Finder changes are very interesting because they have, made all the windows consistent, finally, I believe. Or at least reasonably consistent looking, which was always a weird problem on Mac OS X and something that flew in the face of their supposed design aesthetics.
Right.
But they've also made it work like iTunes, which I think is enormously successful. Although, again, we're talking about a file browser here, so I'm not really sure that that's a major new feature. But, the in-place image, document and image preview stuff, like whatever that's called, cover something. I don't know what that is. Quick look. No, I think it's what it's called. Good. That's good. But to me, this doesn't add up to, major change, right? It's slightly better than it was before.
But your criticism would be then, well, Apple, you're overhyping this. But come on, you're kind of trying to sell 129
changes to iChat. That's all I'm saying. iChat,
but you never. I have to say the other thing.
Saying this is a piece of middleware that Microsoft actually no longer even ships in Windows.
Right.
And they have. The list of improvements to this instant messaging application don't even fit in my browser.
And most sophisticated Mac users use Adium, and they don't even use iChat. I do have to say, though, and this was something we said about Vista, you never know which one of those is going to be the killer app for you. For instance, there's the Mac has done for a few versions this control scroll thing, which lets you zoom in on any part of the window. And when I show people that, they go, whoa, that's great. I really can use that. Or, we use it on TV all the time. Now, that's something that maybe most people don't want, but a few people might. And it's just one of those weird little things that's there.
Power user feature.
It's a power user. You're right. It's a power user feature. And so it may be that out of these 300, I'd be happy if there were 4 features that I go, wow, that's really something I can use. And I bet you there's at least that many.
I don't know if there's that many that would make you go, wow. I think there are plenty of nice changes,
I'm really excited. I have to say, I'm very excited. Again, you've used it. I haven't used it, so I'm completely talking out my
for
rear
example,
end.
Spotlight works in Help now,
Right.
The system-wide search. I mean, duh.
Yeah, big deal. I'm excited about Quick Look. I like the idea of being able to preview documents in this full-screen quick cover flow thing. I think that could be very useful.
The cover flow thing, I would just say, cover flow
with documents.
Yeah, it's a little hokey. I mean, the problem you have in cover flow is the same problem you have in cover flow on a small iPod, which is the performance is a little tough. If you scroll too fast, you just see a bunch of gray and black squares.
Right.
It takes a little while to fill it in.
I'll have to. One complaint that people made about you, or whoever it was that was writing about you, said you completely missed the fact that ZFS is now.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't think anybody really.
I did. I specifically missed that on purpose because I don't think anyone.
Who cares?
Big deal. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it.
I agree with you. I don't think ZFS is a killer feature.
It absolutely isn't. And it's, by the way, it's not even listed on the 300 plus.
It's not one of the 300. So really, it's 301.
Assuming it's in there.
But then right. Yeah, it's funny because I'm not sure ZFS is in there.
I'm not either, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. But there are little things that somebody's going to be crazy about the fact that Ruby on Rails is installed. That you could, it's not going to make my day, but and maybe you're right. Maybe it's the advanced users that are going to be the most excited. Paul, just so you know, this is exactly the kind of conversation we have on Mac Break Weekly. And I think it's all but the most severe Apple fanboys are probably having the same thoughts.
Right.
Well,
by the way, I should be fair as well. I obviously hear from the crazy people on a regular basis, and I think there are 12 of them. But I also do get emails occasionally from people who just either want to check in with me to make sure I understand what the deal is, or are actually saying we're not all crazy. And sometimes people will actually email us and say, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying here, because you understand that not all of us are this insane, right? And obviously.
Well, and, I have to say, I am friends with many of the people who are very critical of you, like John Gruber. And, I don't want to get in between you and John Gruber, but I think sometimes John is interested in, as anybody who has a blog is interested in driving traffic as much as anything else. And I'm not sure.
I have to. Listen. This is one of those things that's going to sound unbelievable. Obviously I make these little promo things on the super site and so forth. You almost have to go to the site to see it. I'm sort of preaching to the choir in some ways there. I'm doing that so people understand where I'm coming from, because I am going to write a review, and I'm going to write a very positive review, but I'm also going to do it with the sense from the perspective of a Windows user. Is this enough to make me go to the Mac? And I don't believe that it does or is, but I very rarely think that in that way. I honestly am not. I don't publish something and chuckle and rub my hands together and say, come little fools.
You're no Dvorak. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think like that. And I know people, especially some of the crazier ones, think that I do think like that, but I don't. No. And
I know you, Paul, and I know you're just speaking what you believe in from the heart.
I want people to understand what's going on. I'm not pushing an agenda beyond what I believe to be the truth. That's it. I want to be honest about stuff, and I want to be transparent about it. And
I just got 300 emails from people saying, "What the hell are you talking so much about Leopard on this Windows Weekly podcast?"
There you go.
See, we pissed them all off. No, but there's a reason, because obviously people are making that choice between Windows and Mac, and they're going to be looking at the Macintosh.
By the way, it's bigger than ever numbers. No doubt about it. Apple's market share is up. This is something that affects the Windows community. And over a decade ago, I'd have to really think about this, 12 years ago, whatever it was, when I first started writing WinInfo, I very specifically wrote about Apple and Palm and Unix at the time and Linux eventually, because I feel that within any of these sort of technology-oriented communities, that people kind of have their blinders on and they see what's in front of them,
right,
and they don't really understand that there's other stuff going on in the world. And I think it's important to put this stuff in perspective for everybody, so that you just at least know what's going on. You don't have to drive a Ford, but know what they're putting out this year and compare it to what you're driving, and make your decision accordingly. I mean, don't just buy Chevys because you're a weird Chevy guy or whatever. I just think it's important to have that perspective.
Well, if there's one thing that pisses people off more than us talking about Leopard,
yeah,
it's us talking about the iPhone.
Right, right. And who makes the iPhone again? I can't remember.
I don't know. It's some. I think it's their Finnish. I don't know. They're from.
Right.
So, but this is actually. I blogged this immediately. I think it's very good news. It's what needed to happen. Steve Jobs finally said, "Yes, we're going to create an SDK. Right. Yes, we're going to allow third-party apps. It will be out in February." And one of the reasons it's taking so long, and I applaud them for this, is that we want to design it to be secure from the ground up.
I mean,
that's not why it's taken so long?
Oh, I'm sure that is why it's taking so long, but I'd like to know why they didn't just say that in January. I mean,
that's a good question.
They've spent so much time and effort, and by the way, generated publicity squashing all the poor people that desperately want to put applications on these phones.
I gave up on my iPhone because I couldn't put third-party apps on it. That's precisely why I'm using a BlackBerry.
I don't know how close I am to just walking away from this thing
forever.
I
love the iPhone. I'm not going to walk away from it forever. I still have it, but I'm using the BlackBerry more because I can put third-party apps on it.
For me, it's third-party apps and the high-speed internet stuff that is just so much better on Verizon.
Right. That's a good reason.
And the fact is, I travel a lot for work, and it's nice to have this thing I can plug into my computer and be online anywhere in the country.
Right.
Via the phone, which is something you can't do on an iPhone.
No, and I agree. The iPhone has a couple of problems. One is third-party apps. The other is AT&T.
Yeah, and I don't mean sorry to be all pragmatic about it,
but it's a work of art, Paul. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you don't get it, man.
You're not
cool. Okay, fine.
No, and I'm not throwing my iPhone away because I do love it. I love it. I think it's great.
I love it. I do too. But I have an iPod Touch, which is much of the iPhone.
Right.
and much of what I like about the iPhone is in this device. And I don't know. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, you made an interesting point. I think this is a good point. I think, well, first of all, point number one, Apple really needs to talk more.
Yeah.
By being silent on this subject.
Is just the biggest thing in the world. And it's disappointing when it doesn't happen on the Microsoft side. We can talk about things like the Windows Update baloney that's going on where, they were silently updating the system. And
both companies do it. Both companies do it.
But a little bit of talking there would have just solved a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So, and I really find Apple's position on the iPhone third-party app thing to be really disingenuous, because they had to have known all along that they were going to do this. They
left
impossible.
a line on the user interface for third-party apps.
Yeah,
they left room.
Yeah. Sure.
No,
by the way, I mean, it's not even as simple as just third-party apps. How about letting me take the ones off I never want to use?
Yeah. Or
what
just putting a bookmark. Let me put a bookmark. There's that blank row. Let me put a bookmark there.
I don't ever want to click on YouTube by mistake.
Right.
Could I just get rid of that?
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, I don't know. Again, I maybe I want too much control. Maybe I'm not right for Apple. Maybe, but I just don't.
And by the way, I think when you say Apple, it's Steve Jobs.
Of course,
it's
Apple.
It's Steve's vision. He's the dictator. It's his vision, and one of his visions is and he's he's this way personally. I know better. I know better. I know what you want, and let me do it.
Right. Well, this was the arrow keys on the keyboard of the original Mac, the one-button mouse. No floppy drive on the iMac. On and on and on. I mean, arguably ahead of his time, I guess, in some ways. But again, maybe I'm just too pragmatic.
And in some ways, he does know better. But for those of us who want some choice, it's a little frustrating. Anyway, that's coming. There are going to be third-party apps.
Now, when's this coming? This is like February,
right? Which means that's when the SDK comes out, which means unless they leak this early to some privileged developers, we're talking an iTunes. It'll probably be through the iTunes store. I'm almost certain it will be. And it probably won't be till June.
But hopefully it will be like the podcast model where some people can give it away if they want.
I hope so.
And there's a library on iTunes, which, by the way, they really need to think about changing the name of that store. It's so much more than Tunes, right, already.
Right.
And if they start selling iPhone applications through there, I think they need to reevaluate that. But
that's a good point.
I think what you're going to see is, look at the resource
iZone.
The what?
The iZone.
That's pretty good.
Welcome to the social. No, wait a minute. That won't work.
Exactly. The people who were writing things for the iPhone already were very quick to jump on the bandwagon. They had those the web development seminars all around the country, and applications, web applications appeared very quickly. We're going to see an astonishing array of third-party applications on this thing immediately. I have no doubt of this.
Well, that's why it was odd, because Apple could have tapped into all of this energy and enthusiasm.
I know. I don't want to get political, but
do you think Apple released the phone before it was time?
I think Apple releases everything before it's done. I think that's the way they do things. And by the way, before anyone jumps all over me for that, and I can point out all the the updates that go out via software update the second they release iLife or anything else you want to choose.
But Vista's all. We could say the same thing of Microsoft,
of course, but we're talking about Apple.
I think in a way what we're talking about is the computer industry as a whole.
Maybe, but
games are released before we're beta testers on every new game that comes out.
Well, that's right. This is the internet society in some ways, right? But I think in Apple's case, I honestly believe it's part of a plan.
A plot?
They look at a plan. They look at the market and they say, we need to hit this thing big.
Right.
If they announced the iPhone in January and didn't release it until November,
I couldn't do that.
That might have been too long.
Yeah. Well, maybe they should have announced it. Maybe they should have announced it now.
Well, but they've already sold, over 1 million of them.
Doesn't hurt.
Listen, it's very likely they've already recouped their development costs by this point. So, maybe this is part of a staged rollout they had planned in advance.
I was I said consistently from day one, wait for the next generation. This is not the phone to buy. This is beta.
Right. Well, I posted this thing on the SuperSite blog, which I would bring up right now, but it's so damn slow. It will probably come up after the podcast is over. But, one of the big complaints I had about the iPhone was not so much about the device itself, but rather about all the unbelievably positive reviews this thing got when it first came out. And my reaction to these people, which was like, are you kidding me? Have you actually used this thing? And you have to wonder about all the people who bought iPhones based on these reviews they read, in these major publications. Well, this guy from MSNBC recanted his review.
Oh, really?
He's getting rid of the iPhone. And this is the thing that this absolutely freaks me out. This is what he wrote. I'm just going to read. This is what he wrote this week. He said, and while my MSNBC.com review of the iPhone ended with the revelation that I had typed the entire first draft of the story as a long email using the iPhone's virtual
how painful.
keyboard.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The reality is I prefer the real mini keyboards that are found on the BlackBerry Trio smartphones to Apple's unreal feeling on-screen keyboard. So he actually included something in his review as a positive note about this device, and now he's saying, it was all.
That was wrong.
What a jerk. God, that is so
I would castigate him, although I feel in some ways I was sucked in a little bit by Steve's got a reality distortion feel around him.
I know he does.
And,
you know what broke it for me, by the way?
What?
I saw Steve Jobs at a Microsoft event, if you can believe that, when he was at Next, and he was pushing some sort of it was web objects, basically. And Next had come up with what I believe was the first elegant back end for dynamic websites.
Yes.
And they used to do these demos of Dodge trucks, and you could click on a color and the color of the truck would actually change in real time. And I can assure you back in the mid-1990s,
it's a big deal.
Was revolutionary stuff.
Yeah.
And you get caught up in it. And as lame as this is, we're talking about web development stuff. Seeing this demo and watching this, I was thinking, oh my God, this is incredible. And later on, I saw a video of him appearing at another event, and it was exactly the same speech. And I had that sort of moment where if you've ever seen a stand-up comedian or a concert in two different cities, and you realize you're seeing the exact same thing, you all of a sudden you realize he's a salesman.
Yeah.
This stuff that seems so impromptu is not.
It's like when you see a political stump speech.
Yeah.
And it's the same speech 400 times.
Exactly. So many versions of this. And
a comedian who does the same routine for 5 years.
Exactly. There are people I know who are very good speakers, and one of the things I've done in my life, horribly, by the way, is go around the country and you give a speech about something, and I'm not good at it. But the one thing I still feel very strongly about is that there are people who are good at it who are like the stand-up comedians. They have the same shtick every week, every show, and I just can't do that.
I can't either. It's so funny, and I know that I should.
I just that's not a part of me, and I look at him like that, and it helps me get over this reality distortion field, because it does exist. It's very easy to get caught up in the moment with him. But you got to remember, he's selling you something. I mean, we're talking about stuff that no one ever actually needs. I mean, these are all luxury items, really. I mean, we're talking about music players and, phones, really expensive phones. I mean, you have to sort of put it in perspective. So I don't know. He's a smart guy. I mean,
he's very smart, and he's a masterful salesman. I mean, that's really always what he's been.
For someone who has absolutely zero background in design, he is a master designer. There's no doubt about it.
Well, he gets good people. Let's put it that way.
Of course he does, but I mean, but a lot of these ideas come right off the top of his head. They do.
Yeah.
I mean, you could picture him blowing by, pods in a office somewhere, just throwing out ideas to people, and they just make it happen.
Totally, absolutely. So one thing Apple did do this week that I think is great and long needed was they dropped the price on the unprotected music. I think they had to. I think Amazon's undercutting them anyway.
That was another awesome quote from this week. Amazon and Walmart are the two big competitors today. Obviously, Zune will be on board. There'll be others, and these are companies that are selling non-DRM protected tracks, right?
Mostly because Universal said we're going to go with these guys, not with Apple.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that everyone aside from Apple is selling, MP3 tracks, which I think is the right way to go because it's more compatible and so forth. Apple is selling AAC tracks. Apple's tracks are also just a few cents more expensive than the competitors.
We should say that 256 kilobit AAC will sound much better than 256 kilobit MP3. I mean, AAC is...
It's not better. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's
the successor. I asked the guy, Karl-Heinz Brennenberg, who created MP3, he said, no, AAC is the successor to MP3.
Sure.
We did it. We took what we learned from MP3 and we did it better.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Although, there are all kinds of blind listening tests around, maximum.
I can't hear any difference. I know, but I'm an old guy.
So I'm not, and I admit this. I'm not I'm not an audiophile. I'm not, I'm not the expert there. I don't know, but 256K sounds good to me across the board. MP3, WMA, AAC, whatever.
And you make the point. It's much more flexible. It plays on everything.
That's my big concern. And that's part of that digital media core thing that I'm doing on the super site. I mean, compatibility is job one.
Right.
I won't accept a dramatic loss in quality, but if it's indiscernible to the naked ear, so to speak,
I think it is. Yeah.
But I like that Apple actually came out and specifically said that the price cut that they did was not in response to the competition.
Oh no.
And what they said was, this is funny. If you really parse this sentence, it doesn't make any sense. An Apple spokeswoman said that it's been very popular with our customers, and we're now making it available at an even more affordable price.
It's doing so well, we're going to...
Exactly. Well, because companies often drop the prices of things that are selling well.
Just like the iPhone.
Exactly. I mean, and by the way, the difference between $1.29 and $1 may be exactly the difference between $600 and $400. I'm not sure as far as percentages. It may be the same percentage price drop. I don't know. So maybe the comparison is probably very close. But obviously they're pricing it in line with the DRM protected tracks, and obviously they're doing it because that's what everyone else is doing.
I wonder how people who paid $1.29 for the last 6 months feel.
Sure. Well, I did. Right. So I bought a few albums and I upgraded a couple of songs because they offered that, and I don't find that to be a huge problem.
Big deal. 30 cents. Although a little voice in my head says, gee, maybe they planned to do this all along. They just wanted to get us suckers who are going to upgrade our library, because if you're going to upgrade your library, it's the same price. They can't charge you. So
Absolutely. They could always do that. So actually, we should look. I don't know if they've changed their policy on the upgrade your library.
Oh, interesting.
Right? You do that for free now? I'm not even sure.
Well,
but you know what? I don't think it's wrong to charge 30 cents to upgrade your library to a higher bit rate.
No.
If I could go even higher and pay another 30 cents, I would do it.
Yeah.
That's okay. You're paying, for that's an upgrade. That's okay.
Right.
You're talking about the $129 price for Leopard. If the price was $29, I can assure you we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
That would no-brainer.
Be a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, anyway, that's let's see. Any more Apple news? Napster. How about Napster? Let's talk about Napster. Is Napster still in business?
Yeah. They have apparently 6 or 7 users. No, they have. They say they have 770,000 subscribers.
But they were the first subscription model, right?
Yeah, and I blame them for ruining subscription music services for everybody. I really do.
Really? Why? Because they did such a lousy job?
I have been convinced for a long time that subscription is the way to go.
Me too. Yeah.
And I think that there are two things that are killing it. One is that the price is too much money.
Right.
And there are some rumblings that Universal is working on their own online service that will solve that problem, right? Which
they want to give it away. You buy the hardware and you get it for free.
Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, if they do something like that, the people who are paying $15 a month to Rhapsody or Napster or Yahoo, if they're still around, are going to stop doing it because that's too much money now. But I always felt 15 was too much. I always felt like the top end should be $10 a month. I mean, $15 becomes something you have to think about. If you make it less than 10, I think people would just jump on it. That's the way I look at that. But the other thing that Napster did, and I have to say they were particularly egregious in this capacity, is they had the worst application ever. As far as jukebox applications go, front end to the store, that kind of thing. Worst ever.
It's Roxio. Roxio owned it, right?
Well, now they do.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's actually kind of convoluted how that worked out, but basically, Napster today is what used to be Roxio, and the Roxio that's around is something else.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I can't even keep it straight in my head.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. So Napster does some things right. One of the nice things about Napster is you can just re-download tracks all the time. So you install something on a new machine, log into Napster, all your tracks get downloaded. That's actually pretty sweet. But that gets lost in the mess that is their UI. And they've upgraded it over the years, but this has always been a vexing problem for Microsoft. It was one of the reasons that they did MSN Music. And it was one of the reasons they were going to do a subscription service on MSN Music, but then didn't, because by that time, Urge had come along and, the market had changed and so forth. But I honestly believe that Napster ruined subscription music. They set it back by years. And that if Apple had done it instead, 5 years ago, whatever, there would be millions of people subscribing to a music service right now. So Napster, this thing can't go away quickly enough in my mind. I am just traumatized by Napster, And now they're on the web.
Yeah,
so anyone could use it. You could be on. I guess you could be on Linux and use Napster. And
that's good. See, isn't that good? I have to say the reason I fell for subscription was the Zune. My experience with the Zune.
Yeah.
Because here it is, a brand new device. Nothing I have is going to play on it. But all I had to do was I had a monthly subscription, and I just said, I'll take that album. I'll take that out. And I filled the thing up in a few minutes. It was great.
No, I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, one of the things I run into is I'm, getting old. I don't really, not a lot of new music coming through the house these days.
Right,
I'm kind of stuck on the stuff I grew up with. And so I sort of take myself out of this equation. But I think that for people who are in that, whatever that is, 16 years old to 40 or something, that age group, who are discovering new music, subscription music is the way to go. And as good as the iTunes Store is, one thing it's not good for is discovering music. I mean, the 30-second preview, there's no way to go in there and discover stuff, you know?
So you think that the subscribing is better for finding new music?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do...
It doesn't cost you anything.
Right. Well, I mean, you're right. Yeah. So you're paying the monthly fee, but I'll travel with my iPod, and I spend a lot of time rating songs, and I actually just blogged about this, but I actually have a smart playlist in iTunes called Songs That Need to Be Rated. And when I go onto a flight, I'll throw the iPod on rather, and I'll play this playlist, and then I'll rate the songs. So over time, the number of songs in the unrated list goes down. But if I was actually discovering new music, I could do something similar like that, where I was just pulling down a bunch of songs from the service. I could rate them and then get rid of the ones that weren't any good and then dump a bunch of new ones on the next time. And over time, you would collect this, awesome collection of music that you knew you liked,
Well, I also think that kids treat music more as disposable.
Sure.
As you get older, you kind of become a collector. You want to collect.
Listen, it's unlikely that anyone growing up today is going to collect music like you and I do, because I can assure you, and this is not just me being old.
No, it's
music today is hardly music.
Disposable.
And it's certainly it's just not on the same caliber. I mean, the 80s were kind of a joke in some ways, but I mean, when you go back to the 60s and the 70s especially, the quality of the music that was created, 30 years ago or whatever is so much higher.
No, we sound like old farts, but it's true.
I know. No,
and
but
you know what? My kids.
I say that knowing what it sounds like, but it's true. Come on, Britney Spears.
When your son, really. When your son gets older, you'll see the kids now in junior high school and high school listen to music from the 60s and 70s. My kids love AC/DC. They love. I mean,
my son likes Van Halen, but he had the iPod on a flight, and he actually said to me, "Do you have any rap on here?"
Really?
He said, "No, I don't have any rap on here." And then I bopped him on the back of the head.
I have a lot of rap. When my daughter was 11 and 12, she loaded it up, and it's all over the iPod. It's all over all of the drives. She doesn't listen to it anymore. That's the other thing why I think a subscription service is a good idea. That it does. Then music is more disposable, and you can go through phases and leave them behind.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind getting rid of Freak a Leak. Every time that plays, I go, "Oh my God, she was 12 when she was listening to that." Oh my! I mean, I blush.
Right.
I can't believe she was listening to that. What was I thinking? So the Universal Store. The rumor is, let's get one Microsoft product in here. What do you say? The rumor is that it might. What they want to do is make the music free. Build it into the cost of the device, which makes a lot of sense with a phone, because you do have this kind of subscription you're paying. I don't know if it makes much sense with an iPod.
No, but that's the other thing about subscription services. This is something we're used to doing.
Yeah.
We do it with cable.
Right.
There are millions of people doing it with digital radio.
Right.
It just seems like it makes sense.
I never thought that would happen, by the way. I thought, satellite radio's history. Nobody's going to pay for free radio, but they do. I do.
Sure.
So it works. So the rumor was that maybe the Zune would be one of the devices. Do you think that will happen?
Well, again, I've never heard anything about this on or off the record, but that's what I've read.
I would buy a Zune if I had free music on it.
Yeah. Well, if you go to Napster now, for example, if you sign up for a year, you can get it's just a 1 gigabyte.
Yeah, it's a crappy player.
Flash player with a Napster logo on it, whatever. I mean, those kinds of deals are actually pretty enticing to people. And if it was a top tier player.
Wow.
How much is it? Of course.
How much is a subscription now in the Zune store?
It's $15 a month.
See, that's too much. It's got to be $5 or $10. Is Yahoo still doing the $5 a month thing?
Yep. Same thing. Yeah. They had a deal when they first started where it was $9.99 a month, and I think that was a limited time deal. But I always thought that was that had to be the entry point.
Yeah.
$5
is better.
$5 is a lot better.
And if you're getting $60 a year from me for music, and I don't get to keep the music, I can't distribute it. It's completely protected by its very nature. I would think they'd be happy about that.
People get this is another thing. People get, I think, unfairly militant over. Well, I don't own it. I want to own it. Well, you don't. You don't really own it when you buy it, though, do you?
No.
And by the way, because of the way computers are and hard drives and so forth, I mean, unless you're pretty good about backing up and so forth, there's a pretty good chance you're going to lose that sucker anyway.
That's true.
And, you don't want to go back to Apple with your hat in your hand. Can I have my downloads?
I want my music. This makes a lot of sense. It really does. I'll tell you, I could tell you right now, Jay Allard, I would buy a Zune. If you,
I would never personally address that man, but
I would. All right, Dave Calton, I will take back everything bad I ever said about the Zune. I will buy a Zune. I'm not even saying free. You don't even have to do free. Just make it $5.95 a month. for unlimited music, and I will buy a Zune. It could only be Universal Music, and I would still buy a Zune.
Interesting.
See, that's the problem with this Universal store, right?
They're talking with everybody, right? With Sony, Warner, whoever.
Universal is?
Universal about this, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, they're looking at doing this in partnership with all the other major labels.
And you know who we can thank for that? Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, okay.
They want to kill Steve. No, they do not like the power the iTunes Music Store has. They do not like the power they gave Steve Jobs. The only reason they signed a deal with Steve Jobs in the first place is they thought, it's a little side bet. It's never going anywhere.
Here's the thing the one thing I don't quite get here is, the margins on this stuff have to be razor thin.
Oh, he makes no money on it.
That's what they say. Apple always says, we pretty much break even on this. It's not a big moneymaker. But you listen to the record labels, and they're saying that a big percentage of each song goes to Apple. I'm just kind of curious. I mean,
the last thing I saw was Vivendi's. The chairman of Vivendi said, "We only get 70 cents on the dollar from Apple, and we want more."
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So you do the math. That means Apple's getting 30 cents. They have to pay for Akamai for the downloads. Very expensive bandwidth.
Of course, you get pay people to design and populate the place with content, and keep the store going.
They make
and all
no
that stuff.
money on that.
Yeah, no, it's.
And the irony is, the record companies say, "Well, but no, we want more."
Well, I think the way Apple makes money is, they also sell iPods, right? So, that makes a lot of sense. For a company like Napster, it's like, where's the money? Yeah. I don't.
Where do you?
What's the end game for you guys?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Our contracts give too good a share to Apple. At present, UMG, Universal Music Group, gets 70 euros. That's 99 cents out of the 99 euro retail price charged by iTunes. 70 cents on the dollar.
70%.
So we want more.
More than that, yeah. Well, that's good stuff. It's funny because it's not like the record industry has ever burned any bridges.
Well, the irony is he says that's an indecent percentage.
Yeah,
it's indecent. What?
The record industry is going to be reduced to a burning rubble and a shadow of its former self when this is all said and done. And maybe that's the best thing for everybody. There are groups like Radiohead that are selling things directly to customers. There are groups that have just let their recording contracts lapse, and they go out on tour and they make money that way.
Right.
It's not like the old days.
Look at Radiohead. I mean, I think it's gone very well for them. Look at Madonna. She's dropped her record company.
Right.
It's all about touring.
The world is changing. There's no doubt about it.
Yep. And I still like.
God damn it,
Jimi Hendrix. There's never been anybody as good as Jimi. You don't need this, young people. You don't listen.
I know. I'm on the front porch with the dog under my feet and the cane, and I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for the damn kids.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us for Apple iPhone Napster Weekly, and I hope you'll come back. Next week, there will be some Microsoft news, I'm sure. Maybe.
Well, so next week, hopefully, we're going to talk to Ed Bott. I did email him, and
good.
I think we're going to be good for next week. So.
Ed Bott is rebutting the very... widespread article. We even interviewed the fella on Security Now, claiming that Vista's DRM just makes it pig slow. And so
maybe we could ask Ed Bott what he thinks about iTunes. Just keep it going.
Sure. So we won't even ask him about Windows.
Ed wrote this really interesting series of articles that are directly related to Windows, but I think instead of talking about that,
no. Look, hate mail to Paul. Okay, you already got his email address. You're already sending the hate mail there. Just keep it going. Okay.
Well, everyone loves you anyway. You have nothing to fear.
No,
right?
That's not true. I get. Well, you probably get more hate mail than I do, but I get a lot of hate mail lately, especially because I'm either too nice to Apple or not nice enough. I talk too much about the iPhone, or I say too many. I was too nice about the iPhone, but then I whined too much when they bricked it, and I mean, it's just you can't. But the thing is, look, I think one thing you and I have in common: we say what we think, and we're not beholden to anybody. I think nobody could say that. Nobody's going to say that you're in Microsoft's pocket or I'm in Apple's pocket.
People say that about me all the time.
They say it about me too.
I find that very irritating.
Pretty clearly not the case. And you agree or disagree. Our job is to tell you what we think, and now you know. So now you know. All right, I'm going to run, and I thank you so much for being here. Windows Weekly is on every Thursday. We'll be back next Thursday. And who knows what we'll talk about. Ed Bott will be here. We'll talk about Gutmann's thesis that Vista is a pig due to DRM. Ed's going to tear that apart. Thank you,
yes,
Paul. Check out Paul's work. He's on the super site for Windows, winsupersite.com. His blog is currently, although I think it's going to move back onto the Win Super site, but right now it's internet-nexus.com. And, of course, he's news editor for Windows IT Pro and writes a lot of columns, including Scratch My Back and I'll Scratch Your Cat, or whatever. The big
the Emperor Has No Clothes.
The Emperor Has No Clothes. All about Leopard.
I'm going to change it every couple of days.
Thanks, Paul. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.